Okay. I'd like to call this public hearing to order for the Sun Peaks Mountain Resort Municipality. It is 3 o'clock, Tuesday, February the 10th. Today's public hearing is convened under the provisions of the Local Government Act of British Columbia to hear submissions relative to the temporary use permit 2019005R. This is the public's opportunity to make representations to council. All persons who believe that their interest in property is affected by the proposed temporary use permit shall be given reasonable opportunity to be heard respecting matters in the proposed bylaw. I would ask those members of the public who wish to speak to commence your address to this council by clearly stating your name. Council will not debate the matters of a proposed bylaw or a temporary use permit with individual citizens, but council members may ask questions of you following your presentation. The main function of this public hearing is to listen to your views. No one will be or should be discouraged or prevented from making their views heard. Temporary use permit 2019005R, if approved, will allow short-term rental within an existing single-family dwelling at 4110 Sundance Drive. Do staff, we have any written submissions at this time?
I believe so.
No. And does anybody here in attendance wish to speak on this matter? No. Calling for a second time for speakers. Third and final time. There being no speakers, I declare this public hearing closed. Time is 3:02 and I call this regular council meeting to order of the Sun Peaks Mountain Resort Municipality for Tuesday, February the 10th. I'd like to acknowledge that we live, work, and play in the traditional territories of the respective people. Are there any late items to introduce? No. And can I get a motion to approve the agenda as circulated? Councillor Kimmel, second by Councillor Gillespie. All those in favor? Under 4, adoption of minutes, 4.1, we have the regular council meeting minutes of January 27th. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes? Councillor Reich, second by Councillor Kimmel. Any errors or omissions to these minutes? Councillor Reich.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just relative to the temporary use permit that we had, the motion that we approved. I'm wondering if we can, and this may be just with a change in staffing, but we've adopted the sections out of the report that staff were recommending to us. And it has the word subject to public input at the public hearing, but we've already gone beyond the public hearing. And if council were to want to put something in the minutes, we would have done that after the public hearing. So I'm thinking the motion should stand as we're authorizing the issuance.
And remove that.
And remove that reference to that piece. And then also with respect to the terms, because there's a lengthier version of the terms under which we're approving the permit in the report. And I think we should be using that section for the minutes as opposed to the summary section out of the report that doesn't contain all of the terms. So, and maybe just as a practice, we should do that for all of the applications. So I think that shows up in 5.1.
Yes, it does.
And it probably shows up in 6.1, which is the temporary use permit that we were considering for this actual meeting, but same thing, we should use the terms and the detailed terms and conditions from the report and the minutes.
Okay. So making that amendment, staff have that, we're good. Okay, excellent. All in favor of adopting the Jan 27 meeting minutes?
As amended.
As amended, thank you. And then under 4.2, we have approve the public hearing minutes of the January 27th meeting. A motion, Councillor Reich, second by Councillor Gillespie. Any errors or omissions there? Seeing none, in favor? Okay, excellent, thank you. Moving on to 5, business arising from the public hearing. We now have the temporary use permit 2019005R 4110 Sundance Drive. And I believe Director Hopper, you're online, sir?
Yes,
Thank you, Mayor O'Toole. Can you guys all hear me?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Yeah, this is following the approval of issuing the notice at the last council meeting. Temporary use permit for 4110 Sundance Drive, a secondary suite located in a single family home. The auxiliary dwelling unit limited to 6 people, 6-person occupancy. No fines or bylaw notices were issued in our records. There was the life and safety inspection already conducted, and no issues were raised there. Parking and snow storage has been reviewed. It all looks good. They've got a lot of room for that. And per the report, staff is recommending that council issue the temporary use permit.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the report. Can I get a motion on the recommendation and subject to the public input and hearing, which we just had? The council authorized renewal of the temporary use permit number TUP 2019-005R for 4110 Sundance Drive for a 3-year term, subject to the following conditions in accordance with Sun Peaks Mountain Resort municipality bylaws and policies. Councilor Dye.
Well, one thing I think maybe we should note in there that we are still pending the final of our review. And that the proponents do know that there could be changes going forward based on the short-term nightly review.
Believe
With license, I don't think that's in.
under potential changes on page 10. Yeah, like to your point, yeah, that's a good point. If you look under discussion in the second paragraph, it does say potential changes to short-term rental requirements. Staff currently undergoing a review, proponent is aware and that there may be upcoming changes to requirements. And that would be captured through the business license process. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's good. Anybody else? No, so I'm gonna get a mover. Councilor Kimball, seconder. Councilor Dye. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor? So moved. Excellent. So number 6, under mayor and council reports, just wanted to quickly kind of miss talking about this at our last meeting when we were in the midst of the second one of these. So just over the last 4-ish weeks, we have, council and senior staff have taken part in 2 community meetings with our neighboring First Nations. The first one was with Squillax, Secwepemc, formerly Little Shuswap, and the second one was with the Sconlith. These meetings went extremely well, were very productive, focused on working collaboratively for opportunities to work, projects that benefit our combined communities. One of the key takeaways was during the last cycle of RMI funding approvals, we got $100,000 RMI fund approval for a new Secwepemc Medicine Trail. And the discussion with Cookpeas Francois from Squillax and Councillor News from the Scholars would very much like to get a working group going and have members of their organizations, their communities, as well as Adams Lake join us in that working group. Councillor Kimball will likely be our council representative in that as we get working in here in 2026 to have this project done by the end of the year. So, and then on another positive note, been emailing back and forth and communicating with Cookpea Duck Chief from Adams Lake, and we are now kind of staff on both sides are working on setting up a date and a location to do a community as well with them. So lots of good things happening there. Some of the discussions around past successes, and this goes back some years, but Squillax, the Secwepemc was originally a development partner in the very first staff accommodation building that Sun Peaks Resort built. And that was a successful project on many fronts. And then I believe the second one was Tecumseh's partnered on that one as well. So that's it on that front. And then I was going to pass it off to councilors to maybe talk a little bit about some of the things happening around RMI in this building and the work we're doing there, and
I'll go ahead. I'm gonna start one too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll touch base on the Sunbeam Center that we're in right now and the catering kitchen that's been the focus. So two parts to it, just to sort of give you a scope. Our main plan moving forward with the kitchen is to create a hot hold kitchen with really good bones. So we're not focusing right now on equipment per se, but we're focusing on creating a space that can then be adapted later on. You know, bones to a kitchen, including plumbing and electrical and fire suppression, all that sort of stuff are really important to move forward successfully. So that's one of the aspects. We're also looking at storage solutions, and we need to retrofit some doors to double doors, which wasn't done originally in the when the building was first built. So good upgrades. The timeline for the kitchen itself, we possibly could be completed that part of the project before the Saber event, which would be a huge win. The doors have a lead time of 6 to 8 weeks, so that pushes that down a little bit, and that timeline for the door completion, if that's the route to go, when storage, would be later on, depending on the contractor, the lead times of the door, and yeah, just what events are in the building. So that's that, and then I'll touch base on the kiosk project for events in the arena. Also exciting. I think we are doing good work here. We have 4 quotes so far. We haven't decided on whether that will be a 1 kiosk or a 2 kiosk system. It'll be focused on low risk foods, so packaged products, pop beverages, are RTD, so ready to drink service, and potential of draft. So reviewing the 4 quotes, and you know, looking at what the best avenue moving forward is there. The timeline for that is if we could get the solution or one of the solutions in place late December so that we could trial it through as part of event season, that would be a win. But again, lots to navigate on that front.
Yeah, and I think it's just important to note that we're looking at having this fall completely within the RMI funding. So there's no additional taxpayer money being put into these projects at all. So that is also, you have some grandiose plans and visions, and things might have to be done in a couple steps, just as the quotes come in and we realize how much it's gonna cost, but this is fully RMI funded.
Champagne taste of your budget.
Yeah, we have lots of those.
And then also a thank you to Tourism Sun Peaks and the group that sort of worked together to get this as far as we have, including Shader. So
Yeah, it's been great work, and I would say Saturday night, took my staff and we attended the Cameron Story game, and I happened to sit with a couple whose son plays on the team, but she also happens to be one of the organizers of the major hockey tournaments up there. And they were very excited to hear about those types of developments and how that will support more successful events when they come back up to host tournaments next year. So that's great. Councilor Reagan, do you want to maybe touch base a little bit on what's happening with the housing authority and the BC Builds project?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yeah, exciting news, people will have seen, but if you haven't seen it, the BC Builds project is really turned an important corner. The concrete foundation work is done, and framing of the building is starting to go up, so we're excited about that. We should do a special mention of the hard work that the project team from BC Builds and our contractor has been doing on the project, and make special mention that both our CAO and our Director of Operations also participate actively in that project team, along with Jesse Abraham, our housing manager. On the financing side, our CMHC low interest mortgage financing is well underway in terms of the application process. We should hear something within the next month on that, and just a note that this is the final mortgage funding, so this doesn't actually get put into place until the project is fully complete. We do have construction funding through the BC Builds program, and that's how we're actively moving forward on that fast track construction. And on the Sun Peaks Housing Authority side of things, we are working hard behind the scenes. We hope to roll out our Housing Authority website and our strategic plan in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for more information on that.
Excellent. CEO and administrative reports, sure.
No verbal reports from the
Okay.
staff, but we do have others.
Some stuff, yeah, absolutely. 7.1, community grants and aid report, Director of Finance.
Should I step out now? or
Yeah, so
is-
before we do that, we're gonna, Counselor Dye is gonna step out, because he's on the board of directors of one of these groups, so.
Should, no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Alpine,
something's out.
sometimes that, Alpine.
Council directed staff to budget $6,000 for the 2026 community grant and aid program. Applications were advertised in late November with a January 12th deadline, and 5 applications were received. Staff reviewed each request against the grant guidelines, including eligibility, funding limits, and promotion of volunteerism. Staff are recommending approval for 4 grants totaling $5,654.37, which is within the approved budget. The recommended recipients are Adaptive Sports, Sun Peaks Freestyle Club, Sun Peaks Alpine Club, and the Sun Peaks Recreation Trail Association. Staff recommends council approve the grants as presented.
Can I get a motion on the awarding of grants? Counselor Kimmel, seconded by Counselor Gillespie. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? So moved. Somebody just give Counselor Dye, thanks, David. It's not for beer. We're licensed in this building, but you'd have to go through a few locked doors to find the store. I'm pretty sure the keys are sitting right back there. Okay. Still checking. Moving on to 7.2, we have some changes upcoming in our Fire Smart Community and Support Program. We got a report here. Fire Chief Siobhan, would you care to speak to this?
Yes, there's been some recent changes to the Fire Smart Community Funding and Supports Program. They were announced on January 28th. So a summary of some of the changes is that they closed the 2026 open intake on the 30th of January due to limited remaining funds. They actually opened up a adjudicated intake on February 2nd, and it's going to close on April 30th with about $25 million remaining in the intake. And they're expecting that the funds will be fully allocated through adjudication. All future applications will be limited to 1-year projects instead of the 2 from 2024 and 2025. But they've also removed fuel management activities from the funding, which we relied on fairly heavily. They've also made some adjustments to the Fire Smart activities in their guidelines as well too. We were fortunate enough to get another application in for fuel management prescriptions prior to the January 30th cutoff. But moving forward, we're going to need to look for alternative solutions for fuel management programs up there, if they don't keep including it.
So thank you for that. Now, do we need a motion here on this for the recommendation of the letters to be written? Okay. Can I get a motion to provide letters of support to the Premier, Ministry of Forests and local rates advocating for the renewal of the long-term funding? Councilor Kimmel, seconded by Councilor Dye. Questions, discussion? Councilor.
Mr. Mayor, just a question, it's not so much on the motion, but it was in the background materials, and I noted that the UBCM in their question and answer piece had made specific mention about Crown Land Wildfire Risk Reduction Program that the province has supposedly enhanced with funding. And I know that the Crown Land component was a very passionate piece of former Mayor Raines, and in particular, the transition between Whitecroft and Sun Peaks, and I'm wondering if we can, in addition to writing to the premier, maybe we can ask staff to follow up and see if there is in fact additional resourcing there, and find out how we might proactively encourage the town to do something in that area.
Yeah, because I know 2 years ago at UBCM, it was a key discussion point in our meeting with both, wildfire and with forestry. As Mayor Rain expressed his desire to see them create something along that ridge off ICBC corner that if the fire is coming up the hill, we've got a bit of a fighting chance to kind of at least slow it down. We've heard many things from terrain being an issue and all these kinds of things. So the chief wanted to respond.
Yes, Ministry of Forests are planning on doing some more prescription work down near kind of the waterfall area, Whitecroft waterfall area, and kind of along the base of the hillside there, as well as above the cut block that's on the way down to Whitecroft, and furthering the work that's already been occurring from the roadside. They're just moving in and uphill from those areas, as well as some additional areas around Happy Lake and Little Happy Lake and on the hillsides around there. We still have some projects that are hopefully going to be happening through Forest Enhancement Society funding over on the east side along the Forest Service Road access. But we've also applied to continue on into the village from that area, as well as coming into the village on Belmont.
Councilor Reagan.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, two follow-up questions to staff. I'm wondering if we can, or if you have already had contact with forestry and we know specifically what it is that they have planned. My only point in asking that is that I think it would behoove us for council to know what it is they've got planned, and if we think that we need to advocate harder for forestry to do some additional work or allocate some additional resources in that particular area, I think council should know that, and we should be able to be advocating for that earlier. And then another question through staff, but I'm assuming it goes without saying that Forest Enhancement Society grants perhaps are not out yet, and we will still proactively look at whether or not we have access to those, because that was another area that UBCM had touted as having the ability to continue to fund prescription work that is no longer funded by UBCM.
Chief, yes, we're still in constant contact with Forest Enhancement Society. They are still looking at funding some remaining projects here. Their goal is to fund the fuel treatment side of things, not prescription making side of things. That's where we were leaning on UBCM funding for this application and prescriptions. So hopefully with this this last application that we got in, it'll serve us for a couple of years down the road. Have some prescriptions ready for treatments, but it's after that when we got to do more prescriptions.
Okay. And what would be the timeline on finding out about this last application that you just put in for subscription?
I believe they said 120 days.
Okay, so kind of end of the season, early spring. Okay, comes back.
I think kind of, yeah, I had a couple of questions, more just sort of along the lines of how much, I think Councilor Wright had asked, just how much sway or input do we have in what the Ministry of Forest does on these burns? I know it's kind of funny that this funding gets canceled 2 years old, not even a year after they spent a bunch of money to get all this work done and where the work needs to be done. There was 2 different, not surveys, but whatever you would call them, where they came in and studies on where we should be doing this and what we should do.
Identified, yeah.
They spent all this time and money, 2 different government branches, and now then 6 months later, they pull the funding on it. Just hard to fathom.
Just adding, Chief, to what Councilor Brighton was asking about, was kind of maybe all encompassing when we ask the questions about what BC Forest has planned. how we can kind of, as a council, advocate and push on that to see if there's a little more to be squeezed out of that. And I understand that there's like the grant app you've just done, which is regarding burns, and then we also have our 2-year funding that includes our fire smart officer and what goes with that. Just thinking in terms as I was reading this, if we could get a report back from you as a part of this information around forestry for the next meeting, that covered off kind of maybe a 30,000 foot level of our fire smart program, because what I'm seeing is that if this funding issue is gonna be, do we have to start being concerned about the fact about we get a healthy, active fire smart program going, and then essentially we're talking, 18 months from now, or a little bit less, where that program runs and a lot of the positive work we've done is kind of, mitigated. So maybe a report back, just kind of, these are kind of key things I was looking for, is kind of looking at timeline wise, when did we actually activate and start that program? And then what have we completed and accomplished to this point? And what are our plans going forward between now and when the funding runs out? Because it seems to me like there's gonna be a lot of us at the trough fighting over a much smaller pool of money. And the more success we can show, the more points we're gonna move up the list to say, okay, they've spent their money wisely, let's help them to do some more work. We see that in grant applications when we're trying to do infrastructure work, and Director Burton is, watching a fund that's overprescribed 3 or 4 times over, there's a lot of people getting no, so we wanna try and put us in the best position to make sure we get a yes at the end of that. If you could please, that'd be great. Sure. And Councilor
I think we should also too, like, as we have these meetings coming up with our neighbors, that this, hopefully we can all tie this in if they're also, cause a fire coming through here doesn't affect us, it also affects them as well, especially if it's a larger fire, so they might certainly have a bit more pull on some things than we do as well too.
I'm just making a note here, make sure that's on our conversation. Okay. So motion on the floor, all those in favor? Okay, moving on to 7.3, we have a temporary use permit application, TUP 2026001, Director Hoffer, here to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor O'Toole. This was an application we received from the Tourism Sun Peaks organization that would allow them to bring in food trucks for their events. We looked at kind of what Kamloops has been doing and some other municipalities, and we've collected a list of conditions that basically the goal was to limit any fire and life safety issues and municipal service issues such as wastewater capacity. I can go through the conditions. I think most of them are pretty self-explanatory. The one that I do want to highlight is number E, or letter E, food trucks shall be placed on concrete, asphalt, or similar style ground. The idea of this is to prevent the food trucks from being placed on kind of dry, kind of like a fire hazard type of environment, or a really wet, soppy, maybe grass field. We want to make sure it's on good, clean footing and good material that's not going to spread any fire if something were to happen. The other item is, I guess, item A. Food truck will be receiving a business license, and as part of that, they'll have to undergo a fire and life safety from the fire department and will not be able to operate until that is passed and approved. We've got a system in place where we're comfortable doing that inspection day of, where the food trucks will sign a declaration of the items that are going to be required in that life safety inspection. The fire department will come by day of and confirm if anyone has failed one of these items, they will not be able to operate. Happy to take any questions or comments from council.
Councilor Dye.
One thing that's not super clear in the application, we are looking at getting in Tourism Sun Peaks to have our own kiosks. Are they also under this as well too, or is this just kind of outside kiosks? Just because when you look at dumping outside of Sun Peaks, I mean, we're not the whatever, what do they call them, the kiosks or our own food and beverage, ready to serve stuff that we're gonna be serving under there. That's not leaving Sun Peaks afterwards to be dumped, that's gonna live here. So does that include those new things we're trying to purchase and get going, or is this just outside?
Director Hoffer?
That's a really good question, and just kind of mulling it over right now is maybe we should add something along the lines of existing businesses in Sun Peaks, or would be under maybe their existing business license, and we would have different conditions for them.
Thank you, Councillor Gillespie.
Maybe some language, that separates a purpose-built kiosk, versus a food truck. Because I think what we're talking about here is, a food truck from neighboring, towns, coming up and operating, during events here. So I think there is enough of a difference to sort of segment that.
Mhm. Whereas we're talking about kiosk that essentially has a permanent use. Yeah,
Yeah,
CEO
totally.
Campbell.
I mean, and maybe Director Hopper has the answer to this, but my understanding is that the purpose-built kiosks are separate. That's
Yeah.
a separate RMI funded project, I believe we've completed RMI funding for that. So what we're proposing here, or what's come forward here is specifically for food trucks.
Yeah,
And hopefully those will be those are gonna be portable as well too, those, so they're not like, I just get clarification is. We should be able to move those, so it's not kind of a built thing that's built and it doesn't move. So I just want some clarification, as I think Councillor Gillespie also touched on. Also too, maybe about something with the existing business license, cause I think down the road, I think Tourism Sun Peaks saw last year, like. For something mobile, something outside like that. The existing businesses in Sun Peaks don't really have the capacity to do this well. But maybe at some point, someone down the road will, and we want, I mean, I'm not sure if it's in Tourism Sun Peaks procurement policy, but. We do want to ensure that if there is a local option, there always will be a local option, if there is. A local option, well, I don't think we're wanting them to leave the village to empty their water and stuff if their business is full-time based in Sun Peaks.
any councillors? Councillor Reagan.
Mr. Mayor, I think the issue about the definition probably is just staff needing to work on the actual definition that they have in the report relative to
Mhm.
food truck or mobile trailer. And just clarify that it doesn't include
Permanent
those
sources.
other semi-permanent
Semi-
installations.
Yeah, because the kiosks are technically movable, but you're not gonna drive up and drive away like there's.
No, it's just,
But it's just simply everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
CEO
so
Campbell.
I think we should be able to.
We can do that, and the definition we're using is out of our zoning bylaw, hence why
Correct.
there's a TUP coming forward, because our
Yeah.
zoning bylaw currently doesn't permit food trucks as they're defined in our zoning bylaw.
Councillor Campbell and then Councillor Gillespie.
And sorry, as far as going back to the kiosk, was this primarily prepackaged foods, et cetera? Was there going to be anything prepared within the kiosk?
At some point, we had kind of looked at the possibilities of having two trailers, one being more food, one being more liquor. Budget wise, at this point, it's not really going to allow that. But I mean, I think even down the road, it would be more along the lines of popcorn, hot dogs, maybe pizza. We're not looking at either one of these trailers at this time of actually putting in like deep fryers, ovens, whatever. That
I'm
has,
working with raw ingredients.
yeah, no.
Sorry, Councillor Gillespie.
Yeah, so, to touch base on the food truck, that we're focused on right now. Looking down the road, this doesn't exist right now, but if someone were to open or, start a business in Sun Peaks. That the food truck was based in Sun Peaks, would this bylaw still, make them go off out of the municipality to dump their water? I think is, like, separate from the kiosk, say. Somebody started a food truck business up here, is the expectation that even though the home of the food truck and business is Sun Peaks, their expectation is to go off. And dump.
Mr. Hopper, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so the purpose of including that is to make sure we're not adding extra strain onto our service system. These business licenses will be paying a business license fee, but it'll be a pretty basic fee. And so just to make sure that we're not kind of adding extra strain to the infrastructure, we would ask that they dump the wastewater offsite. So if someone in the municipality was looking at doing it, we could look at even amending the business license bylaw to include a section for food trucks and capture all that cost and whatever the fee would be.
Councilor Reagan and Councilor Kimball.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, I don't think that really answered Councilor Gillespie's question. I think the uniqueness of this is it relates specifically to just the Sun Peak Center site, nowhere else in the resort could food truck operate. So I would think if somebody wanted to start a new food truck business that was mobile within the community, they would have to go through some type of other zoning bylaw amendment or temporary use permit and be evaluated by council. So it isn't included within the framework of what we have before us. And I do have a couple other questions relative to the conditions. So I understand the dumping of the wastewater outside the municipal boundaries. I'm hoping that we can amend that to say that it is required to be at an approved sandy dump facility. We're not talking about just going and getting rid of your
That's, yes.
somewhere else outside of.
Probably. Let's encourage the following proper procedure.
And what I didn't get clarification from staff, so the conditions say special events, the application was for Sun Peak Center stage events. Are we leaving that more loose to consider other types of events in the Sun Peak Center site with the food trucks, or is that just a terminology correction that we need to do?
I did go back and forth on that quite a bit. It was probably the last thing in the report I changed was including it as just the center stage events or other events at the center. I took it to do all special events because I figured the municipality does control that space, so we would have a degree of control if we felt that an event maybe we weren't necessarily wanting food trucks at an event if it was a smaller event or something like that.
Okay, and then last question, Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering if staff can ultimately follow up with us, but when we structured the Sun Peak Center stage arrangement, there were investments done and we had a mechanism with Tourism Sun Peaks to offset the costs of that. And that was called the CapEx, and I'm just wondering if we didn't anticipate food trucks when we did that, and I'm wondering if staff can clarify for us whether the revenue from this stream goes to offset the CapEx costs.
Mr. Burton and I will connect on that.
Follow up, excellent, thank you. Councilor, did you have something?
I did, well, Councilor Reagan did touch on it, I was
Okay.
thinking of C under conditions of use as well in terms of the wording. And then the other thing I was just going to throw out was that, of course, a food truck here, that is a business originating in Sun Peaks can actually still travel elsewhere to do business, and then they come back and dump here. So I think that there's lots to think about in terms of.
When that happens,
It's concerned, it's not just whether they'll be dumping here up for, are they taking from elsewhere and coming and dumping here. So I think, again, that there's a lot to think about if we look at that.
Yeah, excellent. Any further questions or discussion?
No, just maybe to make sure that staff brings back a report, and as Councilor Kimball just mentioned, the mention of fees and costs. Director Hoffer said nominal fees, but maybe that's not quite the route we want to go down, that it's a nominal fee. If someone's going to come up for a big enough event and they think it's worthwhile being up here, I don't think we're looking for a nominal fee. I think we're looking at a relatively decent amount of fee that can pay down some CapEx. And yeah, I don't know if there's been any thought from, it's a Tourism Sun Peaks question, not an us thought, but maybe even the fee or something being based on a percentage of sales or something.
Just further to that, to Director Hopper, and was just thinking about this requirement to dump off-site at a certified location. If they're here for a multi-day event, they may not have intentions to drive off-site at the end of every day. Right, so they set up and they're planning on being here for, say, a 3-day window, so something to consider, there may be
A charge.
a need to actually, you know, jump at a location here, whether that's an agreement with Sun Beach Resort to use the, you know, the sandy dump for the RV park during the summer months, like what that looks like, I don't know, but I'm just saying from a business model standpoint, it may be an unrealistic expectation that somebody drives to heck, you know, to Timbuktu and back after they've operated for 10 hours before they can operate the next day because their tanks are full and now they need to offload. But they're not going anywhere else the next day, they're operating here. So this might be something else to consider as well.
Yep, can definitely look into it.
Okay, anything else? Nope. So the recommendation before us is the council authorize the distribution of a notice of intent to consider a temporary use permit number TUP 2026-001 for 3200 and 3315 Village Way. I get a motion on the recommendation. Councilor Kimball, second by Councilor Wagner. Any further discussion? All in favor? And it's moved. Moving on to 7.4, Director Burton.
Yeah, unfortunately not great news. We had regards to our letter. Well, pretty simple, I think it speaks for itself, but haven't taken questions from council.
When they give the bad news letter, is there any specific reasons in it, or they just say, unfortunately, you were unsuccessful?
Actually, the bad news letter is, if you haven't received a good news letter, we have bad news for you.
Okay. There's nothing specifically said back to us on anything to do with our application, they didn't say it was because there was a piece missing or a.
Typically, we get the boilerplate language like, you know, projects are considered on a priority basis and things like this, so.
Subscribe.
Yeah, and obviously always oversubscribed, so we would love to give out more money, but we only have so much.
Mr. Mayor, just to add.
Yeah, Councilor Wagner.
Councilor Dye's question, do they have any kind of scoring matrix or review assessment at all? That they provide feedback on, you know, I think we have sort of put a considerable amount of energy into being prepared to make proper grant applications and have all the foundational elements together. I'm just curious if they administratively ever provide feedback.
I haven't seen, I don't know if they have them behind the scenes, I haven't seen any. Typically the grants will say things like, you know, this grant is intended to support affordable housing or just housing growth or your green initiatives, things like that. I haven't seen any sort of scoring metrics in the grants I've seen.
Question for you, just thinking in terms of, so once they give you the no letter, bad news letter thing. At what point is it easily accessible to get the data on what grants were approved?
Yeah, sometimes they release a list.
Still now.
Yeah.
So we can at least kind of do that kind of, I guess, you know, post debrief to say, okay, what is it about? Is there a theme amongst the ones approved that doesn't, you know, we don't, and it could be something so simple as, well, we were applying for a relatively small amount of money and the projects that got approved tended to be on a much larger scale. In which case, well, it's a little hard to turn your $4 million project into a $20 million project to make it get attention, but is there a theme that we can look at and say, you know, okay, now we know that. It's another little arrow in the quiver going forward as we're making
It's a good point to
decisions.
pay attention to moving forward.
Good. Excellent. Well, thank you for that, for the bad news. Under 8 bylaws, 8.1, we have our utility fee rate change report. Director of Finance.
The municipality has been working since 2018 towards operating its water and wastewater utilities in a financial sustainable way, funded primarily through user fees rather than general taxation. While this approach remains a long-term goal, significant infrastructure upgrades have required substantial borrowing. Sun Peaks provides water services to fewer than 1,000 customers, but must maintain infrastructure comparable to a much larger communities. Rising debt servicing costs, particularly following the interest reset change in 2025, means the current water revenues are no longer sufficient to fully support operations and debt obligations. Council has already approved a 5-year strategy that provides predictability phased increases to strengthen the financial position of the utility. Consistent with the direction, staff recommended applying the approved 2026 increase to the water system only to ensure the water utility is covering its own costs and to avoid ongoing subsidization from the wastewater revenue. So we're looking for first, second, and third reading of the water.
Can I do first and second as one? We're doing third as a separate, correct? Okay. I need a motion, please, council give first and second reading to the water service and rates amendment bylaw number 0136-006-2026. Councilor Reagan, second by Councilor Gillespie. Questions, discussion?
One observation, Mr. Mayor, and I can talk to staff about this, but in the actual bylaw details, the rates of the user rates have all been adjusted by the 20%, but there are some flat fee charges in the bylaw that are not adjusted, and staff are quick to come back and confirm that as they go through the more comprehensive rate review process, they will be looking at those flat rate fees within the bylaw structure for changes, and that would include things like hybrid use, sand pipe use. It may include sandy dump options and the like within those bylaws. So
Thank you for bringing that up. Any further questions or discussion?
No, I was just going to mention that the base user charges and stuff were all adjusted, we're going to adjust by that 20%,
Correct.
but
Listening, no. And all in favor of the motion? That's carried. And then on the second motion, the council give third reading to the water services and rate amendment bylaw number 0136-006-2026. And then Councilor Kimmel, second by Councilor Reagan. Further discussion, comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, motion is carried. And then moving on to number 9, any new business? I don't believe so. No. And 10, do we have any questions from the public online today? No. And any questions regarding things on today's agenda from here in the audience? 1 and 2.
Mario Poza.
Yep.
2 questions. In the past, I've heard stories that the electrical system at the Sun Peak Center has been somewhat under addressed. Just wondering about the addition of a prep kitchen and the electrical draw that's going to have, given the issues. Has that been taken into consideration?
You want to address that and then you'll do your second question? Do you want to speak to that, Director Burton?
Yeah, my understanding is that the electrical capacity issues are at the arena, not within this building itself, so. We currently do have a contractor working towards an energy audit assessment for both facilities. To further drive energy efficiency and open up expansion, particularly over at the arena side. See how that great.
And then within those, just so we're just within the RMI grants, there is funding for electrical upgrades in the locations like in here. As we put in the kitchen, there's money set aside specifically for electrical upgrades. Your second question?
Second question, with regards to the food truck thing, back in our day on council. There was some, well, sort of a 2-part. Number one, is there a time limit on how long a food truck can actually be up here? Or can they come up and set up shop for the entire winter? And number 2, we had a degree of apprehension or about food trucks because the commercial property tax is significant in the community, as those people who run businesses in the community are aware. And for those people coming up with a food truck, they're paying a business license at what rate you get to be determined. I understand, but I would hope that the rest of the community, businesses within the community have been given some enlightenment about this possibility, because those food trucks are gonna possibly take away some of the business for those people who are paying a significant amount of tax to our tax base.
want to say something, I can chime in as well, if you like.
So we don't currently have any time limits built into the operation of a food truck in the community. I don't know if Director Hopper wants to address that, or if we have that built into the conditions for the specific TUP that's on the agenda. In terms of, I think staff are well aware, and council is as well, of course, that food trucks can be of the feeling of disparity in property taxes and the potential to take away business from other restaurants. My understanding is the approach that Tourism Sunfeast is taking is that they are trying to ensure that local businesses are prioritized for these events. And then specifically for this particular area, there aren't a lot of there's not a lot of ability for people when they're at an event to actually access food and beverages. And so the idea is that the food trucks are filling a gap in this specific area for events that are taking place here at the Sunpeak Center.
Just want to say, Councilor Weston and Councilor Rick, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that. There has been discussion in the business community about the capacity during these events. And it has come back to the guest experience and creating a event or multiple events that run well and can cater to a massive influx of people. So I can say that the business community has been consulted and you know, overall, the consensus is that this is a good idea for Sunpeak's itself and the customers that are showing up to these events.
Yeah, Councilor Reagan.
And I may just expand on Councilor Gillespie's comment and then add one further to the CAO's explanation. Certainly this process in and of itself enables the business community to come out when we hold the public meeting to provide additional input. So we're kind of catching it on both fronts in advance and during the consideration of these terms. And it is very clear in here that you cannot come up and set up and operate all winter. This is related to special events that are either sanctioned by Tourism Sunpeak or they're sanctioned by the municipality. They have a specific duration daily by virtue of the time frame. So these are tightly controlled, I think, in terms of the food truck experience relating back to what we're trying to do in terms of a much better guest experience and attracting these events to the community. So it's not wide open food truck city. It's very tightly controlled on the grounds of the Sunpeak Center and Sunpeak Center Road.
Sounds good.
And I will add to that as well. That in an event-based situation, quite often you're getting many tourists from outside of Sunpeak proper coming up into Sunpeak. They will come to the event. They are actually staying longer than just for that particular event. They may stay overnight, they may stay for the weekend, etc. And in that case, they're also utilizing the businesses within the community. So it ends up being a win-win situation.
And I would just say, like, obviously, you've got a number of people sitting here at this table that wear two hats, business community as well, and I can say without question, Tourism Sunpeak did a significant amount of consultation, ongoing, talking to the businesses, and at least from this business owner, and from the one sitting next to me, is that when we hit busy weekends and as we move farther into this multi-year plan that Tourism Sunpeak has to grow the event schedule, especially in the spring and fall. And we saw this in the old days when we had the concerts on over here in the Bunny Hill. When you put thousands of people in the village, we cannot effectively execute. We're all overrun and lined up out the door with wait lists. And we now end up sending guests away with a poor experience because they either didn't get in or, you know, they're eating a chocolate bar and a bag of chips they got at the store when they actually wanted to go spend money on a meal. And then we were offered opportunities to take part in this, but the reality is when all these peak events are on, we're flat out and we don't have extra staff. It's not like we've got a whole bunch of casual line calls that we can pick up the phone. Our teams are built to support and fund and operate our day-to-day businesses. And then all of a sudden you have a spike of 3,000 or 4,000 people on a weekend. And then everybody, you know, a concert ends and there's a gap till the next concert and everybody hits the village in one block to try and eat. We're not able to take care of them. So, definitely plenty of consultation all along in this process, and businesses have been given lots of opportunity. And some are choosing to take part and provide a kiosk if their business is designed around that model and it works well, but I can say with one like ours, trying to go and move a cafe culture to the inside of the arena for a day it would be not worth my time.
One thing we can sort of ask and follow up and do as we go through this process, I think it's important, I think we all kind of agree, but it's not specifically noted. That if there's a concert between 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock, that a food truck comes up can't set up at noon and operate from noon till 6 before the concert. This is during the event and the event hours. It's not an opportunity just to come up and run for the entire day.
Okay. So we have the third reading motion in front of us, no any further discussion, we're back in questions, probably. Well, I'm not quite my talking, okay. Questions from the.
We have more questions.
You have one more.
And we have, so your two are done, now we're on to.
Venus Bolton. Yes, I do support the food truck idea. The question, or the two questions that I have. What is council going to do with the food truck that is located next to the Umbrella Cafe? And is there all winter and doesn't meet any of even the criteria that you have now identified that you would like to see for a food truck?
Separate issue, but I'll let the CAO address that.
Mr. Mayor, so that one, flew a bit under our radar, but not entirely. So we did consult with our planners and when Mr. Hopper started here. So it is a permitted use as an auxiliary, use related to the umbrella bar. So it's looked at as an extension essentially of the umbrella bar. So the zoning does permit it. Hence why there wasn't a TUP and why additional conditions were attached to it. They do have a business license. They are required to have a business license. But given the auxiliary use, if we weren't in a position, I mean, we could certainly talk to SPR about attaching potentially some conditions if they're willing to comply with those, but right now our interpretation of the zoning is that it is permitted.
So excuse the pun, it's operating under the umbrella of the umbrella cafe. Yeah, and that was, at the time, it was the dialogue, they were not coming up and operating separately in the parking lot of whatever facility, they were essentially expanding the services of the umbrella cafe.
Now, the other question is whether there are larger or events that attract more people in other parts of the village, as there used to be behind what is now called the annex.
Mm-hmm.
And there were events there in prior years. There had been food trucks up for one or two of them. But they will put the same kind of pressure on the village as an event in the Sun Peak Center. And would that not be an area to also consider for the use of food trucks?
I guess we're gonna cross that bridge, so you're referring to like specifically things like, retro rock or something like that, is that what you're?
Well, the
Kind of
Burger
reflecting
Garden
on.
sponsored and some of those that were behind the annex with a big stage set up
Mhm.
and I think there was some sunbeams. Graceful saying.
Well, and some of that, yeah, and I think, just correct me if I'm wrong, but when that's been operated in those locations, the resort has quite often operated like a beer gardens and food outlet, i.e. like a burger stand. I don't remember specifically food trucks being in those events.
Masses?
Yeah. And they're extending and operating at masses, Council Reagan and Council
I
I.
was just going to say, Mr. Mayor, that those probably fall under the same accessory use situation. Not, I don't know whether they're licensed or not, but within all of the resort holding lands.
Mhm.
That SPR has, that same accessory use formula would apply, so it could be an extension from the process.
Sure, was dire than the corporateness.
I think it's also too, is that really probably not something that's going to come up much more in the future as Tourism Sun Peaks has gone, other than really retro rock, Tourism Sun Peaks has changed its plan and marketing. The big free concerts back there are not something Tourism Sun Peaks in their 5-year plan is operating. It's all controlled ticketed events in the Sun Peak Center that they have planned going forward.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sorry, Director Hopper.
Director Hopper, you have Something to add?
Yeah, just following up on a couple of questions there. When we were going through Tourism Sun Peaks with this and kind of batting around proposals, there was the thought that maybe they would go with a full-on rezoning or site-specific rezoning to allow the food trucks. We felt that a TUP was better based on the temporary style, so that we could essentially have a trial run this way and review it for a year, 2 year, 3 years, see if there are any issues, see what happened, see what we liked, see what we didn't like, and then if we felt it could be rolled out in more capacity, we could, or if we felt that, you know what, maybe this isn't for us, or we like the small amount of control, we can proceed as we need to following the CUP timeline.
Excellent, thanks for that clarification. Anything else? Any more questions? In the back?
I just want some clarification on when we were talking about, like, you know, the food and beverage, let's say, you know, taking a cut of all costs. Right now, you know, as we stand, as we're attracting third-party promoters, we're doing 1-year deals and we're changing how we're going about what we get for a cut on every event. But right now in an early stage, we're really just trying to hook these promoters to choose Sun Peaks. And at this point, we're not taking large cuts in order to make that happen. Understanding in years to come, our goal is to split revenue with the municipality. But in order to get to that stage of splitting revenue, we first need to just make ourselves open and available for business so that these promoters see the potential of this venue. So I just want us to consider that as we think about year 1 and year 2 and know that our goal is in year 3 and 4 revenue, but right now it's traction and consistency as we just try to engage with these promoters coming to Sun Peaks.
That's good, thank you, Councilor Leslie.
I'd like to comment on that. I think the reason we are going down the road of this temporary use permit for the arena is so that we can create a really robust customer experience. And I think attracting really good operators and not hindering them with big fees or you know, things that they need to navigate that they wouldn't in another venue is really important at the beginning. I could see, you know, once the traction's gained in a few years, we can take another look at the landscape and see if there's local operators that want to jump in and readjust fees, but I'm on board with creating the systems right now so that our guests have a really good experience.
Yeah, we need to build a foundation first.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I won't go back to the agenda. Any more questions? Seeing none, I move on to 11.1. I need a motion to close this council meeting under the community charter section 91C, labor relations or other employee relations, and 91D, security of the property, municipality, and information that is prohibited, or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Councilor Turnbull, mover, seconded by Councilor Gillespie, all in favor. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.